Sadhu Veshaya Shishya Chitta Vilasine Vidita Kila Vidyaya Moksha Vigna Vighatine Swami Kashi Nivasaya Deshikaya Viragine Chaitanyananda Rupaya Jivan Muktaya Mangalam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Sadgurudev Maharaj Ki Jai. Good evening, everybody. I want to open with few thanksgivings. I'm very happy to be back here to the ashram. As many of you know, I served here, I lived here for 10 years, and it is 2 years since then. I came last year for a few days, and now I'm invited again. So first of all, I want to thank Swami Swarupananda for inviting me, and to Rukmini, and to everybody here who received me so well. I'm really feeling at home, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much. I'm also very honored to be given the time to speak in this symposium. I want to thank Peter and the other participants, everybody who supported me to give this lecture. And I choose the topic, Can We Know Consciousness? My hope in this short talk is to establish clear distinction between three terms, at least the way we in the Advaita Vedanta philosophy describe them or define them. And I'm talking about the brain, the mind, and consciousness. It appears to me that this distinction is not very clear in many other disciplines, in many other places, and that may create some misunderstanding. So my goal and aim today is to make a very clear definitions that will help us to see the difference between them and the connection between them. In order to do this, I choose a text, an Upanishad, which is called the Kena Upanishad. It's a very ancient text that is dealing with this question. The problem is that in those ages when this was written, nobody knows when, but when this was written, there was no understanding regarding the brain. In those days, the idea was that thoughts are coming from the heart, or they had different types of understanding. And today, as yogis who study the Advaita Vedanta philosophy, we have to see their conclusions and try to adapt them and adjust them to our today understanding of the brain and its activities. And this is a big challenge because we have to use what they gave us, and from that conclude how to apply it today. Okay, so this is a very small text, very ancient text, and very interesting text. As a matter of fact, next year we are going to study this text here in depth. So if you find it interesting today, you may want to come also next year. The first verse read like this. Om kene shitam patati preshitam manaha kena prana pratama praiti yuktaha kene shitam vachamimam vadanti chakshushrotram kau devo yunakti. This is a question posted by a disciple to his guru. And the question, the translation, the running translation is, willed by whom does the directed mind go towards its object? Being directed by whom does the vital force that precedes all proceed towards its duty? By whom is this speech willed that people utter? Who is the effulgent being who directs the eye and the ears? I will try to explain it in very simple words, very shortly. Basically, the disciple concludes that if there is a body, and that body has senses and prana, the vital force, and the mind, there must be some entity behind it, whatever it is. Maybe it is just neural connections in the brain, we don't know, but there must be some entity that is responsible for it. What is the nature of this entity? Who is this entity? This is the question. The answer, as you're going to see, is very strange. It says, the next verse is, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Manoyat Vachoha Vacham Sau Pranasya Pranaha Chakshushas Chakshurati Muchya Dhira Pretyasma Lokadamrita Bhavanti. The answer of the Guru is as follows. Since he is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of speech, the life of life, and the eye of the eye, therefore, the intelligent man, after giving up self-identification with the senses and renouncing this world, become immortal. Did you get it? It is not answering the question, right? The question was, who is that entity which is responsible for the prana and the functions of the eyes and the functions of the speech and the functions of the ears, etc.? And the answer is, since he is the ear of the ear, the eye, the mind of the mind, etc., it's not an answer. The answer should be, Mr. So-and-so is responsible to that, right? That's what we are expecting, but the answer is completely off. And Shankaracharya, in his commentary, immediately asking this question. He says, is it not incongruous to answer, he is the ear of the ear, when the reply should have been, so and so with such and such attributes that direct the ears? He's asking precisely this action. Why are you answer such in such a strange way? And then he explains. He says, no. There is no problem in this answer because there is no any other way to answer this question. You are asking a question that cannot be answered in any different way. What we are looking for is the director who is responsible for the different functions of the body, like speech, hearing, smelling, thinking, etc. What is the director? What is that entity? The problem is that that director has no attributes. That director doesn't have any attributes within it, any modifications that can be described. When you are trying to describe anything, whatever it be, you have to find some attributes of that object and describe it. If I want to talk about this stainless steel glass, what I'm going to do, I'm going to find out the attributes of this glass. For example, it is a container that can hold liquids. It is solid. If it falls, it doesn't break. Okay, these are different attributes through which I'm able to define what is this glass. Now, when you ask me about the director of the eyes, the director of speech, that entity which is at the base of what we call the human being or the living being, you cannot do it because it has no attributes. It has no attributes whatsoever. And now we have to discuss a little bit about it. What is the meaning that it has no attributes. What is that director that we are looking for? The answer is consciousness. All of us look within. We recognize that there is awareness within us which is undeniable. We call it self-effulgent, self-effulgent presence. What is the meaning of self-effulgency? It means that something that cannot be proved, but it is so evident that it cannot be denied either. And that is consciousness. Consciousness is that awareness which each and every one of us here in this satsang hall is experiencing right here, right now. Without it, you will not be able to hear and recognize what I'm saying. Now, we want to know more about this consciousness. We want to find out something about this consciousness. Can you tell us anything about this consciousness? So let us see. We know that this consciousness is the knower, right? It knows. How do I know? I know. That's the proof. It is self-effulgent, right? The very fact that I know shows that consciousness knows. But then, when we talk about knowing, we get into a split of subject and object, right? Subject is the knower, and object is the known, okay? When we think about the knower, usually the mistake people do, they associate the knower with the mind. What is the mind? The mind is all the mental faculties that are generated by our brain. Okay, we can put it at this point in this way. Something like the brain is the hardware and the mind is the software. What do we find in the mind? We find basically three things. We find sensations, which are the information carried through the five senses, like things we hear, things we see, things we smell. These are sensations. We have emotions, right? Sometimes we experience anger, sometimes joy, sometimes other emotions, and thoughts, right? These are the three basic functions of the mind. Every function of the mind can trace itself into one of these three. Now we ask, is that knower that is self-effulgent, that knower, that the knowing thing which is in me and I experience it right here and right now, is it a sensation? Is it something that is coming through the senses? Evidently not, right? My experience is that I receive these sensations from the outside world. Therefore, that knower is not a sensation, is not something which is carried in through the senses. Is the knower an emotion? Is the knower an emotion? The knower is not an emotion. I'm answering for you, okay? Because you are shy and quiet, so I will ask the questions and also answer them. But if you want, you can also answer, okay? So when we analyze emotions, we are asking, are the emotions also the knower, also that consciousness which knows? Evidently, the answer is no. Why not? There are different ways to approach it. First of all, suppose there is an emotion, anger. I'm very angry, okay? Now, is this anger also the knower of anger? Do you know that you are angry when you are angry? Yes, right? When I'm angry, I know that I'm angry. Nobody has to tell me. I know, right? Am I the knower of the anger, or am I the anger itself? I am the knower. I know that I'm angry. Is the anger the knower of the anger? No, anger is an emotion. We see that emotions by themselves, they are not the knower. Okay? What is left? Thoughts, right? What do we have? We have thoughts passing through the mind. What is the nature of thoughts? How thoughts work? Well, when we observe it, we see that thoughts behave a little bit like a wave. In what sense? Just as a wave appear in the ocean, just come up in the ocean, exist for a while within the ocean, and then subsides again. Thoughts also, somehow, it is very difficult to catch it at this point. This is like expert meditations. They catch the thought as soon as it comes up. But it is very difficult. Somehow, suddenly, we become aware that there is a thought emerging in the mind. It exists for a short while in the mind, and after a while, it loses its energy and it goes away. This is a thought. Now, is this thought the knower? When we put it in this way, it becomes ridiculous, right? How can something that come up, exists for a while and go, become a knower? That in itself is not a knower. I am the knower of the thought, is it not? Can you know a thought? Of course, this is what we do in every practice of meditation. We become aware of the thought. If I am aware of the thought, I am the knower of the thought, and the thought is being known by me. There are two different things. Can we know when there are no thoughts? Is it possible to be aware of no thoughts? Well, first of all, between every two thoughts, there is a gap. Usually, thoughts are so fast and so close to each other that we are not able to see it. But when we sit for meditation, and especially when we practice for a while, we start to be able to distinguish, to be able to observe and see that between every two thoughts, there is a time in which there is no thought. And sometimes we are even blessed with a deep meditation in which there are almost no thoughts. Right? There is quiet. Now, if I am a thought, how can be aware of no thoughts? If I am a thought, I should not be present when there are no thoughts. So maybe I'm only the thought that knows? Then who knows this thought? You see? The knower cannot be a sensation. The knower cannot be an emotion. It cannot even be a thought. All these are belonging to the mind. Consciousness is not one of them. Let's do a little experiment of subject-object play. I'm watching this glass, okay? This stainless steel glass. Now, the eye is the observer and the glass is the observed, right? The eye observes the glass. We have a subject, the eye. We have an object. This is the glass, okay? Easy. Put the glass aside, close my eyes. Now I'm observing my eye. That same eye that was watching the glass, that was the subject, now is becoming the object. I close my eyes, I visualize the eye, I feel it, I sense it, I may even touch it, right? Now, Who is the observer? This is the mind, right? The mind is observing the eye. Before, when I had a glass, the eye was the observer, the glass was the observed. The eye was the subject, the glass was the object. Now, the eye becomes the object and the mind becomes the subject. Why? Because I feel it, sensation. I think about it. I can even have some emotion connected to it. This is the mind is the observer, the mind is the subject, and the I is the object. Okay? Now let's do the same exercise towards the mind. Can you become aware of your mind? Why not? I'm closing my eyes, I'm observing my thoughts, observing my emotions. I can even be observing my sensations. No problem. So now the mind becomes what? Becomes the object, right? Until now, the mind was the subject observing the eye. But now that same eye become the object. Who is the subject then? If the eye is the object, if the mind is the object, who is the subject? Who is the knower who knows the eye? Well, no. Who is the knower who knows the mind? Sorry. Who is the knower who knows the mind? The answer is, I know the mind. Right? I know the mind. And that I, which is the knower, is not the mind. Is different than the mind. This is what we call consciousness. Okay. What can you tell me about this consciousness? Please, I want to know it. I want to understand it. Then we come back to our Upanishad. The guru is helpless. He cannot tell the disciple, listen, this is the knower. This is the director of the senses and the prana, etc. Why? Because it doesn't have any attributes. It doesn't have any qualities. There is nothing you can say about it and still stay true and still be correct. Therefore, in the next verse, the guru explains a little bit the problem. Na tatra chakshur gachati na vak gachati no manaha na vidmo na vijanimo yathaitad anushishyat. Na tatra chakshur gachati. He tells the student, listen, I have a problem here. Chakshu, the eye, na tatra gachati, cannot go there. What does it mean? Whenever in the Upanishads they use the word there, it refers to Brahman, to absolute reality. And when they talk here, they talk about the manifested world. What he is saying, the eye cannot reach Brahman. In other words, through the five senses, you cannot comprehend consciousness. You cannot comprehend your true self. It is not possible to see it. It is not possible to smell it, to touch it, etc. Na tatra chakshur gachati. Na vak. Vak means speech. Speech here stands for all the karmendriyas. Those of you who have learned in the ATTC and also in the TTC, we have the karma indriyas, the 5 organs of actions. But it doesn't matter. Basically, we are talking about actions. Through actions, we cannot know consciousness as well. It is not possible to know consciousness through any activity. I will go even further and I will tell you something very strange. Even through meditation, you cannot know consciousness because it is an action. But we will get to it later on. Also, speech means words. What he says here, navak, means you cannot explain, you cannot articulate consciousness. When you start speaking, talking about consciousness, you are going to go off, no matter what. Language is limited. In what way? Our language, spoken language, doesn't matter which language, is based on duality. It is based on the split of duality. Whenever we say a word, actually, a word is a definition. What is a definition? A definition means borders. When I say a glass, basically I define this. I put borders between this and the rest of the world. Because I want that when I use this word, you understand only this and you don't refer it to anything else. Our language is based on this duality. And it doesn't matter how much we want to describe something which is unlimited, which is beyond any borders, we will not be able to do it. Now, that consciousness, which is beyond the senses and the mind and all what we said so far, is such a thing, is unlimited, it is one, it is unbounded, it is infinite. How do we know it? Basically because the scriptures tell us. This is how we know it. We cannot know it just by observing, because our observing through the mind is limited, just like language. Until we realize the truths directly. When there is direct realization, then we don't need all these discussions. But until then, we need the help of the scriptures. They are telling us, listen, this is the nature of consciousness. This is the nature of the self. Now you want to realize it, here is the way. Okay? So consciousness cannot be described by language. Natatra chakshur gachati navak gachati no manaha. Also he says no manaha. No manaha means not even through the mind. Reasoning is not enough to know consciousness. You cannot know consciousness through reasoning. It won't do. Therefore, he says, the guru is telling the disciple, na vidmaha, we don't know what to tell you. We don't know Brahman to be such and such. This is the translation. Na vidmaha, we don't know. What we don't know? We don't know Brahman, we don't know that consciousness as an object, as something. It is not something. Something is an object. It has definitions. It is limited in time, in space, and causality. Causality means it has its own cause. It is coming from somewhere. But consciousness is not bounded by time, by space, or causality. Therefore, we do not know it as an object. And therefore, na vijani mo yataita danushishyat. We don't know what to tell you. Basically, he's using here the plural form. He says, we, the teachers, we left without words because we don't know what to tell you. You are asking about something, and we cannot tell you anything about it. Whatever we are going to say, we are going to miss the target. Saying this, he has a lot to say later on, because it is not enough to leave the student in this state. We still have to give some direction. We still have to give a pointer. This is the challenge of the scriptures. The scriptures of Advaita Vedanta are trying to point us towards something which is beyond all concept, beyond understanding, beyond the reach of the senses and the mind and all this. How to do it? How to talk about something that cannot be comprehended through speech? how to explain about something that cannot be reached through reasoning. The scriptures are using two methods. One method is called Lakshana. Lakshana means a pointer. When I tell you, look at the full moon, you don't look at the tip of my hand, of my finger, right? You don't go, I don't see the moon, right? Because I'm not talking about here. When I say see the moon, I'm just giving you a pointer. I'm telling you, listen, just take this line, go straight for a couple of miles, and you will reach there, right? This is where you will find it. This is one method. The scriptures are telling us, listen, we cannot tell you much about it, but here is the direction. This is the direction. Just go over there and continue to go. You will reach there. Okay? This is called Lakshana. A second method which is being used is called Neti Neti. Neti Neti means a negation, not this and not that. Suppose somebody is coming to this room and he is asking, who is Swami Brahmananda here? So one way to say is very simple. This is Swami Brahmananda right here. This is the direct way. Okay? But also there is another way. Suppose I tell to that person, listen, Swami Brahmananda is not a woman. Okay, already 70% of the people here are irrelevant, right? Now, Swami Brahmananda is not wearing orange, he's not wearing yellow or white. Now, almost everybody else is eliminated. And then I say, Swami Brahmananda is not a short person, right? By now, that person can zoom right into the target. Why? Because I negated everything which is not Swami Brahmananda. By knowing what Swami Brahmananda is not, I know also what Swami Brahmananda is, right? In this way, when we want to talk about something of which we have nothing to say, instead of pointing to it, which is not possible, what we can do is to negate everything which is not. To remove all the other superimpositions. This is what we do in Vedanta. The error is that we identify with the physical body and the mind. In the morning satsang, Swami Brahmananda explained this Atma Vichara, this self-inquiry. We start with the gross body and we see I am not the body. Then we go to the prana, we see I am not the prana, I am not the mind, I'm not the intellect, I'm not any of this. So through negation, we remove everything which is not consciousness. The body is not consciousness, it's very easy to see. So why I'm identifying with it? I have to de-hypnotize myself and realize I'm not the body. And then we do the same to the mind. We just did it, right? A little bit. We have seen I am not that mind. Through negation, we slowly negate everything which is not the self, everything which is not consciousness, and what is left behind is consciousness. And therefore, even though the teacher is telling the student, listen, there is nothing to tell you, I don't know what to tell you, still he is going to speak. Why? He's going to use these methods and give us direction, give the negations which we need in order to realize what we are not, and ultimately, hopefully, we will arrive at the right conclusion. We will get into that realization of what we are in reality. Okay? Now he says something very interesting. Anya deva tad vidita dato avidita dadhi iti shushruma purvesham yenas tadvya chakshire. That Brahman, I use the word Brahman, I don't want to get, many of you already know that the nature of Brahman is consciousness. So when here they talk about Brahman, we talk about consciousness. Of course, there's a lot to explain what is the difference between the self and Brahman. There's no self, there's no difference, but we need to explain and discuss it. We are not doing it today. Okay, this is not our subject at this moment. We will just read it as consciousness. Okay, that consciousness is surely different from the known. That consciousness is different than what is known. What is known is the subject of the split between a knower and a known. Consciousness is not that. It is not an object, and it is not at all connected to this split of subject and object. Maybe this last statement is a little too far. We won't have the time to explain it, but ultimately, we learn that consciousness is not even the knower in the sense of a split of of knower and known. It's not even that, but maybe we will talk about it tomorrow in the workshop. We will leave something for that. Anyway, he says consciousness is surely different from the known. And again, it is above the unknown. In other words, he says it is not something you cannot know. It is not something you can know by any means, but it is not also simply that something that you don't know. It is beyond the known and the unknown. Okay, this is what he is telling him, and the Upanishad is going on and on. I want to pick just a couple of more verses to see what the teacher is teaching him. In the second part of the Upanishad, in the first verse, the teacher is a little bit worried. After telling the student about consciousness, about awareness, about all these facts you cannot know it, etc., he is a little worried that the student really didn't get it. That he is not really understanding what is that which is not known, but it is the knower and all this stuff. So he is telling him, Yadi manyase suvedeti daharameva pinunam tvam veta brahmano rupam yadasya tvam yadasya bedeshu attanu mimagumsyameva te manye viditam. Teacher tells the student, if you think I have known consciousness well enough, then you have known only the very little expression that it has in the human body and the little expression that it has among the gods. Therefore, Brahman is still to be deliberated by you. The teacher is telling the student, if you think you know Brahman well enough, it means you don't know it. If you think you know it, it means that you don't really know it. And this is maybe again taking us the point. When we go to the split of subject-object, I know this. I create a distinction. I create a split between the knower and the known. Now, when we talk about consciousness, it is different. And here we have to do a little bit pause and explain something. Modern science, and also many other disciplines, at least the classical science, assumes, and this is at least to my understanding, that matter is the building blocks of reality. Right? What we have is matter and energy. They can convert to one another. There are some equations, but basically the world is matter and energy. Consciousness, according to this theory, is just, as we said, an epiphenomenon of the brain. We have some chemical and electric activity in the brain, and somehow this creates consciousness. So consciousness is a product of matter. Advaita Vedanta is taking it just the opposite way. According to the Advaita Vedanta philosophy, consciousness is the building blocks of reality. Consciousness is the ground of being. There is only consciousness. Everything else, without exception, matter, energy, information, whatever you want, is just an appearance within consciousness. And this is a very far and out declaration. Basically what it means that this is not a cup, this is not a glass, this is consciousness. Why? Because consciousness is the building blocks of reality, not matter, not energy. It is consciousness. And particularly in this example, consciousness is manifesting somehow as this glass. But it is only consciousness. In other words, consciousness alone is. There is only consciousness, and it is only one. There are no multiplicity of consciousnesses, right? We will assume that, okay, suppose I agree to all what you said about this consciousness strange thing, but still I have my consciousness, and you have your consciousness, is it not? Otherwise, if I have the same consciousness that you have, how come I don't know what you're thinking now? I should be able to know what you're thinking, is it not? There is only one consciousness. No. Even though there is only one consciousness, I don't know what you're thinking now. Why? Because thinking is not consciousness. Thinking is an activity of the mind. Okay, strange. Do you have any example? Something that can illustrate this? Yes, I do. I told you, I'm asking the questions and I also answering. Yes, I do. I have a good example to give you. Dream. Everybody here has the experience of dream, is it not? What happens when we are in a dream? When we fall asleep and we get into a dream, it is our own mind which creates an entire world, is it not? My own mind creates the sun, the moon, mountains, people, cats, and dogs. Right? Everything I see in my dream is the creation of one singular mind. Now, in your dream, somebody comes, you go to a lecture in some faraway island, you sit in a lecture and somebody is telling you, listen, you are now in a dream. And the dreamer is only one. There is only one dreamer, and all this you see is just one. You say, come on. How come the lecturer doesn't know what I'm thinking now? You see, we are in the dream. You're with me? We are in the dream, and in the dream, I hear that somebody telling me, you are just in a dream. And I'm saying, no, that doesn't make sense. How the other person doesn't know what I'm thinking if it is only coming from one mind? You say, no, there's no other. There's only one. There's only one dreamer, and that one dreamer is dreaming everybody around you. Say, really? It doesn't make any sense to me. Say, don't worry. Once you wake up, you will understand. Right? When we wake up, we realize, oh my God, it was true. It is just me. Now, this me is not identical with what I took myself to be while I was in a dream. This is a little subtle point that we have to understand. When I'm in the dream, I have an assumption regarding myself. I'm Mr. So-and-so, and I'm having this mind, this body, etc. For example, in my dream, I may be a woman. I may take myself to be a woman. But when I wake up, I realize I'm not. I'm a man. Okay? So what I take myself in the dream to be, this is not the dreamer. Right? This is part of the dream. The dreamer is that which creates all this dream reality. But really, all the dream reality is just one mind. It is just one mind which creates all this multiplicity. I'm not suggesting that dream is equal to waking state. It is not equal. It is different. It is just an analogy. It is just helping us to understand a little better what the Upanishads are telling us. What is the correlation of this analogy? They say that consciousness is the ground of all being. Within consciousness, all this reality appears. How come I don't know what you are thinking? Because within this, what we call this relative reality, I'm identifying with this particular body and this particular mind, and you are identifying with another body and another mind, and therefore it appears to be different, and therefore I have my own memories and you have your own memories. Like what? Like in the dream, I take myself in a particular way, and I have my own memories, and other people in my dream, they take themselves in a particular way and they have their own memories. When I wake up and I realize there were no two, there was only one mind which is responsible for all of this. I told you it is far and out, right? It is very, very different than what we are used to think. It is very different from our normal understanding. Nevertheless, this is what the scriptures are telling us. This is our true reality. And the teacher is afraid that the student is not able to understand, so he's telling him, be careful. If you think you know it, you really didn't understand it. You really got only a little bit of this understanding. And what the student answer? Te manie viditam. Sir, I think I know it. He's a very bold student. He's the best student. He's the Uttamadhikari, we call it. He's the ATTCs know it, right? Uttamadhikari means the first class student. He really knows it. He says, yeah, I understand. I get you, but I know it. Yeah. And now in the next verse, he explains what is this knowledge that he has. And I will try. It is a little subtle, but I will try to bring it out. Nahamanye suvedeti, nona vedeti vedacha. Yo nastadveda tadveda, nona vedeti vedacha. First I will read for you the running translation, and then we will see what we get out of it. I do not think I know consciousness well enough. I consider not that I do not know. I know and I do not know as well. He amongst us who understand that utterance, not that I do not know, I know and I do not know as well, knows that consciousness. Right? So what is he saying? Now the students have the same problem that the teacher had before. Right? Because now we have to convince the teacher that he understands something which is ununderstandable, that he got that which is non-comprehensible. How to do it? He says, okay, don't worry, I don't think I know it well enough. Because the teacher says, if you think you know it well enough, you don't know it. So he said, no, I don't think I know it well enough, but I know it well. I know and I do not know it. He says, not that I do not know, I know and I do not know it as well. He says, I cannot tell you that I know it, because if I say I know it, then already I create the split of subject-object and I fall. It's going to be wrong. But I can tell you that I'm not knowing it. This is neti-neti, is it not? I don't tell you I know it, but I tell you that I'm not knowing it. I know and I do not know it as well. In other words, this thing about which we are talking is not an object. It's not something we try to figure out and we get it and it is ours. No, it is a realization. After negating all the superimpositions, after negating all our identifications, different identifications with the body, with the senses, with the mind, with the prana, with all this we negate, we remove. What is left is consciousness. And I cannot tell you that I don't know this consciousness. That's what the disciple is answering very, very beautifully. Okay, now the last verse that I want to discuss now, and of course any of these verses we can talk about for hours. I just want to give you the gist of it, to see the beauty of this text. Now I want to leave you with something practical. Okay, so far we are talking about a lot of theory, but what do I do with this? What is the practical thing that I can do with it? Pratibodha vidita matam amritatvam hi vindate atmana vindate viryam vidyaya vindate amritam. This is already after the discussion of the guru and the disciple. This is now the voice of the Upanishad itself. The Upanishad is telling us, Pratibodha vidita matam amritatvam hi vindate. If you want to realize the truth, and literally it says amritatvam hi vindate, if you want to become immortal, if you want to realize the truth, what you need is pratibodha vidita matam. We need to get a right cognition with every cognition. Explanation. If we look at the mind, we have continuous stream of cognitions. We are becoming aware of thoughts, emotions, things. All this stuff is going on in the mind and in the body and the external world, and we are aware of it. We can break it into many small cognitions. Okay? Every cognition can have two states. Either you identify with the body and the mind while having the cognition, thinking, I am hungry, I am tall, I am clever, I am this, oh, this is mine, this is not mine. This is called identification with the body and the mind. When I say I am tall, tallness is not a quality, is not a quality of consciousness, right? Consciousness is neither tall nor short. What is tall? The body is tall, or the body is short. So when I say I am tall, I'm identifying with the body and I think this is me. But we have already seen that I am not the body. So this is a mistake, right? So when we have a cognition that comes from this wrong understanding, we are binding ourselves. We are getting deeper into this bondage. Yesterday, Shona said very, very beautifully. She said, what we practice becomes stronger. You remember? What we practice becomes stronger. If you tell yourself, I am tall, In other words, if you tell yourself, I'm the body, your cognition of being the body, your identification with the body is going to get stronger. But there is also another option. And this is not to identify with the body and the mind. To realize, I am not the body and I am not the mind. Now, it is not like, okay, realize, check, done, I'm realized. No. It means that every cognition that is presenting itself in the mind can be either a cognition that comes from identification or a cognitions that come with no identification. What is a cognition that comes with no identification? When I take the position of the witness, of the witnessing awareness, and this is something we can know. We don't need to be great yogis in order to understand it and practice it. Right now, let's do a very short, we have 1 minute, let's do a very short practice. Close your eyes. Imagine, look at your nose. Okay, imagine your nose, be aware of your nose. Now, be aware of your thoughts and feelings and emotions regarding the nose. Are you able to do it? You step aside and you become the observer, which is aware of the thoughts going on in the mind regarding the nose. This is in very, very, very short, the idea of becoming the witness, stepping out without naming, without labeling, without giving anything, just staying as the witness, observing the passing thoughts, observing the experiences, etc. The Upanishad says, Pratibodha viditamatam amritatvami vindate. You will reach the goal when every cognition will be a cognition of wisdom, a cognition of no identification with the body and the mind. Thank you very much. We are going just to 1 second of silence, and then we will conclude with a mantra. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Peace Peace Peace. Bolo Shri Sadgurudev Maharaj Ki Jai. So tomorrow in the workshop we will talk about some other fun things. Thank you very much.